The Blackthorn estate stood on a hill above the pine forest, its stone walls old and grand, its halls always busy with servants who moved fast and spoke softly. In this house lived Cassian Vane, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, a man everyone respected and almost no one understood. Since his mate had died giving birth to their daughter 3 years ago, Cassian had become a shadow of the man he used to be. He ruled his pack with a steady hand, but at home, behind closed doors, he barely spoke unless he had to. Among the many servants who worked in his household, there was one nobody paid much attention to. Her name was Elira Voss. She had come to the estate 2 years earlier, quiet and careful, always finishing her work without complaint. She rarely spoke. It was not because she had nothing to say, but because speaking hurt her. Long ago, when she was a child, a rogue wolf attack had taken her family and left a scar across her throat. Since then, her voice came out broken and thin, so she had learned it was easier to stay silent than to be laughed at or pitied. The other servants whispered about her sometimes. They said she was strange, that she kept to herself too much, that there was something sad hanging around her like a fog. None of them were unkind to her face, but none of them were warm either. She existed at the edges of the household, seen but never truly noticed. Cassian had walked past her more times than he could count. If asked, he might not have been able to say her name. To him, she was simply one of many servants who kept the house running, a quiet shape moving through hallways with a broom or a tray, never causing trouble, never asking for anything. His daughter, Wren, was a different story. Since the day she was born, Wren had struggled to bond with anyone. Nannies came and went. Healers tried herbs and songs and gentle words, but nothing worked. The little girl cried through the night more often than she slept, and during the day she wandered the halls like a small ghost, never smiling, never reaching for anyone's hand. Cassian loved his daughter fiercely, but grief had built a wall around his heart, and he did not know how to climb over it to reach her. He told himself he was doing his best. Deep down, he knew he was failing her. It was on an ordinary afternoon that everything began to change. Elira was sweeping the long hallway near the east garden when she heard small footsteps behind her. She turned and saw Wren standing a few feet away, watching her with wide, serious eyes. The little girl did not smile. She did not speak. She simply watched. Elira did not know what to do at first. She was not the nanny. She had no right to speak to the Alpha's daughter, and even if she had the right, her voice would come out cracked and strange. But something about the way Wren stood there, so alone, so quiet, made Elira's chest ache. She crouched down slowly, careful not to startle her, and began to hum. It was a low, wordless tune, something her mother used to hum to her long ago, before the attack, before everything changed. Wren's eyes softened. She took one step closer, then another, until she was standing right in front of Elira, staring up at her with something like wonder. Then, without warning, she reached out and grabbed a fold of Elira's apron. From that day on, Wren began following her. At first, Elira tried to gently discourage it. She was only a maid, she had chores to finish, and she worried that spending time with the Alpha's daughter would draw attention she did not want. The other servants already watched her with curious eyes. But Wren was persistent in the quiet way that children can be, appearing in doorways, tugging at her sleeve, sitting near her feet while she worked, and Elira found she did not have the heart to push her away. She began to notice small things about Wren that no one else seemed to see. The little girl flinched at loud noises. She avoided the nursery, a room full of toys no one had ever taught her to enjoy. She watched adults from a careful distance, as if waiting to see if they too would disappear. Elira recognized that watchfulness. She had worn it herself as a child. So she kept humming. She began carrying small paper flowers she folded during her rare moments of rest, leaving them where Wren would find them. She never spoke more than she had to, but her presence became steady, predictable, safe, and slowly, the little girl who had never bonded with anyone began to bloom in her company. None of this reached Cassian's notice. Not truly. He was aware, in a vague way, that his daughter had taken a liking to one of the maids, but he was buried in pack matters, in border disputes with a rival faction to the east, in the endless weight of ruling alone. He did not ask questions. He did not think it mattered. Then came the night everything changed. Ren had never had a night terror before, not once in 3 years. But that night she woke screaming, thrashing in her small bed, calling out words that made no sense through her sobs. The night nurse tried to calm her and failed. A healer was summoned and could do nothing either. The screaming echoed down the hall until it reached Cassian's study, where he sat working by candlelight. He rushed to her room, but even his presence, even his voice, could not reach her. She screamed harder when he tried to hold her, as if his very touch frightened her more. A young guard, desperate and unsure what else to do, remembered the maid who was always with the little girl during the day. He ran to the servants' quarters and woke Elira, begging her to come quickly. Elira arrived breathless, her hair loose from sleep, and pushed past the crowd of worried adults gathered uselessly around the bed. She did not ask permission. She simply lifted Ren into her arms and began to hum, the same low, wordless tune she always used. Ren went still, almost instantly. Her small fists curled into the fabric of Elira's nightclothes, and her sobs faded into hiccups, then into silence. She pressed her face against Elira's shoulder and did not let go. Cassian stood frozen in the doorway, watching his daughter find peace in the arms of a woman whose name he barely knew. He tried, gently, to take Ren from her once the crying had stopped, but the moment his hands touched his daughter, she screamed again, clutching Elira's collar so tightly her knuckles went white. Elira looked at him with wide, apologetic eyes, clearly wanting to help him and not knowing how. Cassian stepped back, stunned into silence, something cracking open in his chest that he had thought long sealed shut. That night, for the first time since his mate had died, Cassian could not sleep. He sat outside his daughter's door, listening to the quiet hum still drifting from within, and asked himself how he had missed this. How had he let 2 years pass without truly seeing the woman who had somehow reached his daughter when no one else could? In the days that followed, Cassian began to watch Elira the way he had never bothered to before. He noticed the careful way she moved through the halls, always a step to the side, always making herself smaller than she needed to be. He noticed the high collar she wore even in warm weather, and how her hand sometimes drifted to her throat when she thought no one was looking. He noticed that she flinched at raised voices, but never once flinched away from his daughter, no matter how loudly Ren cried. He asked the pack healer about her, carefully, without explaining why he wanted to know. What he learned humbled him. Elira had lost everything in a rogue attack as a child, her family, her home, and nearly her life. The scar on her throat was not just a mark, but the reason her voice came out broken. She had no pack lineage that anyone recognized, which was why she had never been given proper status among the Blackthorn servants, no matter how hard she worked or how long she stayed. Cassian felt something heavy settle in his chest, something between guilt and shame. He had ruled this pack for years, prided himself on fairness and strength, yet he had let a woman like her go unseen and unheard under his own roof. He began seeking her out. At first it was only for Ren's sake, to understand what made his daughter feel safe with her. He would find reasons to be near the nursery in the evenings, to walk past the garden where Elira and Ren often sat together among the paper flowers. But it did not take long before he found himself wanting to be near Elira, for reasons that had nothing to do with his daughter at all. She was patient. She was gentle, in a way that felt effortless, rather than performed. When she looked at him, she did not see the Alpha King, powerful and distant. She simply saw a tired father trying, in his own clumsy way, to be better. And when she smiled, which was rare and always small, something in Cassian's chest that had been frozen for 3 years began, slowly, to thaw. But not everyone was pleased with these changes. Word travels quickly in a pack, and it was not long before a rival faction to the east caught wind of the unusual bond forming inside the Blackthorn household. They saw an opportunity, an alpha with no mate, an heir who trusted no one but an unranked maid, a household that looked, from the outside, unstable. They began spreading word among neighboring packs that Cassian Vane could not even manage his own home, that his daughter's dependence on a servant of no lineage was proof of weakness at the heart of his rule. Elira heard the rumors before Cassian did. She always heard things first, moving quietly through a house where people forgot she was listening, and when she understood what was happening, understood that her closeness to Ren was being used as a weapon against the man and the child she had come to care for so deeply, she made a decision. She would leave. It was not an easy choice. Leaving meant breaking the fragile trust she had built with Ren, meant walking away from the only place that had ever begun to feel like it might, someday, become home. But she told herself, it was the right thing to do. She would not be the reason the pack doubted its alpha. She packed her few belongings quietly one night, planning to slip away before anyone woke. She almost made it to the gate. Cassian found her there, standing in the cold night air with a small bag over her shoulder, her breath visible in the dark. He had woken from a restless sleep with a strange, urgent feeling, and something had pulled him outside, some instinct he did not fully understand until he saw her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Cassian did something he had not done in 3 years. He spoke plainly, without the armor of his title, without the careful distance he kept from everyone around him. He told her that he knew why she was leaving, that he understood the rumors and the pressure she must be feeling, and that none of it changed what he had come to understand about her. He told her that his daughter had been lost for 3 years, and that she was the first person, the only person, who had ever helped her find her way back. He told her that somewhere in the middle of watching her love his daughter so gently, he had begun to fall for her too. Illyra stood frozen, tears gathering in her eyes, her broken voice barely able to form the words she wanted to say. But she did not need many words. Not with him. It was then that a small figure appeared in the courtyard behind them. Ren, woken by some instinct only children and wolves seem to have, had slipped out of bed and followed the sound of voices into the night. She toddled across the cold stones in her bare feet, ignoring the guards who tried to catch her, straight toward Illyra, and lifted her small arms to be carried. Illyra knelt without hesitation and gathered her close, and Ren buried her face in her shoulder the way she always did, safe and certain in a way she had never been with anyone else. Cassian watched them together, his daughter and the woman who had saved her without ever meaning to, and he made a choice that would ripple through the entire pack. He knelt down before Illyra, right there in the courtyard, in front of the guards who had gathered at the commotion, and asked her to stay. Not as a servant, not even only as a guardian for his daughter. He asked her to stay as his mate, as the future Luna of the Blackthorn pack, as someone he intended to stand beside for the rest of his life. Word of that night spread through the pack by morning, and though some grumbled about lineage and tradition, none could argue with what they saw when the Alpha King and Illyra walked the halls together in the weeks that followed. Ren, once a silent shadow, was laughing now, running through the gardens, reaching for both their hands at once. The pack came to accept Illyra, not because of where she came from, but because of what she had done. She had given their future Luna the one thing no title or bloodline could buy, the trust of a child who had never had a reason to be wrong about anyone in her life. And in giving that gift, she had given the Alpha King his family back.